Hey guys, welcome to this week's episode of Weekly Updates, where we try to keep up with current price action and juxtaposition that to data from our weekly forecasts. As usual, we're going to be starting with the Dixie, and let's take a quick look at the daily time frame. Now, from our previous videos, we already know that we broke swing structure at this point. We also know that for a while we've been in a pullback. Sorry. For a while, we've been in a pullback as characterized by this daily internal bearish order flow. Now, in our last video, we talked about how we might expect price to break internal structure at any point, okay, any moment from then, basically. The reason was that we had tapped into this discount zone. The reason was that we had tapped into this discount zone and we were in a very promising demand zone on the daily time frame. Now, fast forward to today, and right now, we've had our break of internal structure, and immediately after, price has sharply retested into this daily flip zone. Remember, I always say this, the reason it's a flip zone is because it's the last demand zone that caused a failure of this supply zone. Okay, and flip zones are usually very good points for reactions in the market. Okay, so let's quickly scale down to the lower time frame and see what we're dealing with. Now on the 4 hour time frame, remember we talked about how this was our last major structure point. So this was our last break of swing structure on the 4 hour, and something really interesting has actually happened in the past few days. And what that is that at the point where we just tapped into this premium zone, there was a liquidation of this strong high. Okay, so price liquidated this strong high, and the reason we were able to confirm the liquidation is because at this point price aggressively caused the failure of demand. And also, if you look at the candlesticks, we can see that they're they're very healthy, basically. So personally, for me, this is a very strong model for shorts. Okay, but at this point, I wouldn't really advise anyone to be looking for shorts, simply because we're dealing with this particular range of price action on the daily time frame. We've tapped into this daily flip zone, and we've also tapped into the discount area. So there's every possibility that what we might see on the 4 hour, we could potentially see a break of internal structure to the upside and a realignment of the overall order flow to target new highs. Okay, there's every possibility that this liquidation has just provided enough fuel to facilitate this pullback into the daily demand zone. There's every possibility that that's all it is. Okay, so I would let the lower time frame guide me. I really would. Okay, so let's take a look at my favorite pair, the GBPUSD, the daily time frame. Now the daily time frame is basically an inverse of what we had on the Dixie. We broke swing structure at this point, and we know that for a while we were in a pullback phase characterized by the internal bullish order flow. Okay, now the GBP USD has not particularly given any sign of bearish realignment. The reason I say that is because currently we're dealing with this particular range of price action, which is the daily internal structure. Okay, so the daily internal structure is currently bullish. Now, the closest indication we might have that eventually we might see this low get taken is if we decide to use the Euro US dollar and the DXY as buyer's confirmation. But I would advise you to treat each pair as an individual because they really are from experience. Okay, so currently we've tapped into this daily extreme demand zone and we're seeing quite the sensitivity. Now we're going to have to let the lower time frames guide us here. The reason I say that is if you remember from one of our previous videos, I talked about how a run on a higher time frame is a trend on a lower time frame. Okay, so when we scale down to the lower time frame and we look at this bit of price action here, we might be guided to conclude that there's a probability that this low could be taken. But until we look at the lower time frames, we can't really know. So that's usually what I mean when I say let the lower time frames guide you. And that's exactly what we're going to do now. So let's take a look at the 4-hour time frame. Okay. And let's just get rid of this because it's looking a bit congested. Now on the 4-hour time frame, we know that the swing structure is still bullish. Okay. We've tapped into this overlap zone here. Like I always say, I absolutely love overlap zones because they're very strong points for reactions in the market. Okay. If we take a look at this, we can clearly see that internal structure hasn't been broken yet. So technically, internally, we're still bearish. The expectational order flow is a price to break this low, see a retest, break the low, see a retest until that changes. However, we're seeing some really strong reactions from this zone. So it's almost as if this supply zone has failed to cause a failure of this demand zone. And now we're seeing a strong push back into the supply. Usually when this happens, it's usually accompanied by a failure of said supply zone. So we might actually see a break of the internal structure here for potential realignment to target this 4-hour low. That is the expectational order flow. However, because we are expecting something, there's every possibility that this could happen and we could break this swing low. Every possibility, but at the moment, my advice is always stick to the current expectational order flow. If we scale down to the 1 hour and look at this bit of price action, we can see that the internal structure on the 1 hour is technically bullish. Okay, so that's just another confirmation that this high might fail, but at the moment it hasn't and we're still technically bearish. Okay, now I wouldn't advise shorts from this area. I wouldn't advise for the shorts simply because we tapped into the discount area, we tapped into an overlap zone. There's every possibility that you could decide to wait and see if we have bullish realignment and then take your trades from there, whatever aligns with your plan basically. Okay, so finally we're going to take a look at the Euro US dollar. Okay, so last but not least, Euro US dollar. Let's take a look at the daily time frame. Now, the reason I said that the closest thing we might have to a confirmation of what we might expect on GBPUSD is if we look at Euro US dollar and try to take advantage of their positive correlation. Okay, so if we look at this, we already know that we broke swing structure at this point. We know that we've been internally bullish for a while, but at this point we saw a break of swing structure, which is the clearest indication of bearish realignment. Now, here's something really interesting that I wouldn't normally teach here, but let's talk about it anyway. If we take a look at this range of price action. Let's just take a look at this. This was our last break of internal structure here. Okay, this was our last break of internal structure. The next one was here. Don't worry, as promised, I'm going to release that video I talked about on how I map structure in a mechanical way. I really will. I'll get to it. Okay, so meaning that this was one range, one leg of price action. So something that from experience I usually use in very different ways is when price taps into an unmitigated discount zone, two things can happen. Either it provides enough juice to facilitate a pullback into the very next premium zone, or it creates enough juice to go on and break the high, depending on what the overall market objective and scenario is. So applying that bit of information, we know that we've tapped into a previously unmitigated discount zone, and now we're seeing this engulfing candle. When we scale down to the lower time frame, what that might actually show us is that we might be starting that pullback into this daily premium zone in this particular range of price action, which just happens to be the premium zone for the 4-hour swing structure. Okay, that is the fractal nature of the market at play right there. Okay, because we saw a break of swing structure on the 4-hour here, and since then the internal structure has been bearish. Now, at the time of marking this up for this video, we hadn't broken internal structure, but now we have. Okay, so like we just literally talked about, this is another very good sign that we might be starting a pullback phase into this 4-hour premium, which just happens to be the premium of our mini daily price action range. So the idea is that we could potentially look for short-term longs, short-term high probability longs from this unmitigated demand discount, sorry, into this premium area. Okay, so that's about that. If you've made it to this point, thank you so much. Please hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications, because there are lots of exciting stuff that are going to be coming on this platform. Thank you guys. Love you all. Have a great weekend. Cheers.